Close your eyes and picture Rome at dawn. The Tiber breathing mist, roofs still blue with night, and the first light glinting off a forest of temples. Now open them again, because what I really want you to see is not marble. It's bread. A line of sleepy citizens snakes past a bakery, waiting for their daily loaf, and the smell of warm wheat rides the chilly air like a promise. Rome's emperors knew a secret every modern politician learns fast. People forgive a lot if the pantry is full. But here's the trick. Rome was a city of maybe 1 million mouths, most of them not growing a single stalk of grain. The countryside around Latium couldn't feed that appetite on a good year, let alone after war, drought, or a bad harvest. So the empire built something invisible in the monuments, a logistics machine stretching from Spanish olive groves to Egyptian grain fields, from North African ranches to icy alpine passes. It was Rome's real superpower, an ancient version of a global supply chain, but with sandals and sails. Imagine the noise of it. Hooves on basalt roads, harbor cranes groaning over amphorae, clerks scratching numbers into wax while gulls scream above Ostia. A senator in a white toga can pretend he rules the world, but a storm in the Aegean can still make him hungry. And hunger, in this city, was political dynamite. One missed shipment could flip the crowd from Hail Caesar to Stone Caesar, faster than you can say approval ratings. Look at a map for a second. Every sea lane and road you see is a vein. If one clotted, the capital starved. And starvation in Rome didn't mean sad letters to the editor. It meant riots, torched granaries, and emperors dragged into history's dumpster fire. Somewhere in the imperial palace, a nervous prefect watched the horizon and thought, not, will I be loved? But will the ships arrive? He wanted glory, sure, but more than that he wanted a quiet evening without the roar of an empty mob. That nervous man, and the system he served, is our story. Because behind every triumphal arch was a warehouse. Behind every gladiator show was a convoy. And behind every gift from Caesar was a receipt someone had to balance. So come with me down to the docks where the Nile boats unload, and listen for the creak of rope and the shouting of stevedores, because the empire's fate is hanging on tonight's tide. And the next scene starts far from Rome, where the first sack of grain is cut from the earth. Picture a sun-baked hillside in Sicily, 3rd century BCE. The wheat is high, gold as a lion's mane, and a farmer wipes sweat with the back of his hand while glancing toward the sea. He's not thinking about Rome yet. He's thinking about survival. The last harvest was poor, and the tax collector is due. Then on the horizon, sails appear, not traders this time, but Roman warships. The Punic Wars are raging, and the island is about to become Rome's first great granary. The farmer feels the wind shift, so does history. Early Rome fed itself like a tough village. But victory has a way of changing your diet. As Rome conquered Mediterranean lands, its city ballooned. Veterans migrated to the capital, slaves poured in, and the army demanded steady rations. The Senate loved expansion for glory and profit, yet secretly feared the tab. If the new empire couldn't feed its core, the whole project would collapse from the inside out. A crust of bread was now as strategic as a legion, and the most boring committee meetings in the Curia began to matter more than the flashiest battles. Now jump to a still image of Ostia, Rome's port. Warehouses squat along the river like sleeping giants. Ox carts rumble over cobbles, amphorae clink, and the air smells of salt, fish, and damp grain. These docks are where policy becomes dinner. The Republic begins drafting shipping contracts, appointing inspectors, smoothing roads so mules can haul faster. Every improvement is a small confession. We can't live without this. Enter the first logistics visionaries, not glamorous generals, but practical aristocrats. One of them, Gaius Gracchus, pushes a radical idea in 123 BC, subsidized grain for citizens. In a painted forum scene, you'd see him in a plain toga, jaw tight, watching the crowd surge. He wants to win hearts, yes, but also to prevent the sort of hunger that breeds revolution. His rivals hiss that he is buying votes and poisoning old Roman virtue. Gracchus hears them and feels a cold pinch of doubt. Is he saving the Republic or teaching it to beg? To make his policy work, the state standardizes measures, builds storage, and assigns officials to oversee imports. Grain ships from Sicily, Sardinia, and Africa become routine. With each new convoy, Rome learns a lesson modern CEOs know. Logistics isn't an afterthought, it's the business. Yet all this rests on a fragile assumption that the sea stays open and the provinces stay loyal. As the Republic slides towards civil war, that assumption begins to crack. And in the next chapter, one man will grasp a brutal truth. Whoever controls the grain controls Rome itself. Classic bust of Pompey the Great. Calm marble eyes. A commander who seems born to be obeyed. But in 57 BCE, Pompey isn't calm at all. He's pacing his atrium, sandals slapping the mosaic, because the people outside are starving. The Mediterranean, usually Rome's blue highway, has turned into a bandit-infested alley. Pirates dart out from Cilician coves, seize grain ships, sell crews into slavery, then vanish into fog. Bread prices in the Forum climb like a fever. Mothers shout at magistrates. Shopkeepers bar their doors. Every rumor tastes like ash. Pompey's rivals hand him a special commission, clear the seas. It's framed as honor, but it's really a trap. If he fails, he's finished. If he succeeds, he becomes too powerful. Pompey knows the game. He wants glory, sure, but he also wants to survive the politics of men who smile while sharpening knives. In private, he mutters to a friend, "They give me the fire, so I must carry the water." So he does something stunningly modern. He divides the Mediterranean into zones, appoints deputies, sets up supply depots, and choreographs naval patrols as if running a gigantic rolling security operation. Picture a map with neat Roman lines radiating from Sicily to Crete and little ship icons sweeping them clean. Within 3 months, the pirates are crushed. Grain flows again, and Rome throws a party in his name. But the real victory is invisible. Pompey has proven that the Republic can command an empire-wide logistics response fast, if one man holds the leash. The crowd's memory is short, their stomach longer. Pompey becomes the bread savior, and every ambitious politician takes notes. Julius Caesar, watching from the sidelines, feels a twist of envy and calculation. He doesn't just want to conquer Gaul. He wants to make Rome dependent on him the way a city becomes dependent on its waterworks. In his mind, supplies are a leash. Meanwhile, the ships keep coming. In a harbor painting, you can almost hear the thud of sacks and the barked orders in half a dozen languages: Punic, Greek, Latin, Egyptian. Dockworkers carry grain in wicker baskets, sweating in the sun. Clerks sample it for mold. Guards keep order with staves. Yet each future convoy now depends on politics as much as wind. Feed Rome, and you rule. Fail to feed it, and you fall. Civil war is flickering on the horizon, and supply lines are about to become weapons. In the next chapter, Caesar will cross more than a river. He'll cross the point of no return for the empire's food machine. Winter, 49 BCE. The Rubicon is a modest river, more muddy ditch than myth, but tonight it glows under moonlight like a boundary between worlds. Caesar stands on its bank with his cloak pulled tight against the cold. In a still painting, you'd notice his face half lit, half in shadow. The look of a man who knows he's stepping into a storm he can't control. The die is cast, he says, and with that one sentence he turns Rome's supply system into a battlefield. As Caesar marches on Italy, he targets not just cities but granaries. He understands, maybe better than any senator, that armies run on wheat, and so do elections. He seizes state stores, reassures towns that grain will keep arriving, and spreads rumors that Pompey will let Rome starve. It's political theater with very real calories behind it. On the road, his officers count sacks the way others count spears. Pompey flees to Greece and tries to do what he once did to pirates: command the sea. He orders fleets to block grain routes, banking on a simple equation: hungry Rome will abandon Caesar. But Pompey's heart is divided. He still loves the Republic, but he also fears becoming the villain who chokes his own people. Every delay in the supply chain feels like a moral weight, and he can't help wondering if history will remember him as savior or saboteur. In his tent, he watches the sea and imagines children whispering his name with hate. Caesar counters with speed and spectacle. He sends fast ships to Africa and Sardinia, locks down Ostia, and appoints trusted men to oversee the Annona, the grain dole. In the Forum, citizens line up again, murmuring that Caesar's bread tastes like victory. You can almost smell the dust of the sacks as they're opened, hear the satisfied hush of a crowd that has eaten. He stages distributions in person, smiling like a benevolent father, while quietly noting which districts cheer loudest. The civil war ends, Caesar wins, and for a brief moment the supply lines are calm. Then comes the Ides of March. Picture the Curia, red-tiled floor, senators in white, and suddenly a spray of blood against a statue of Pompey. Outside, rumor runs faster than any courier. Markets freeze, bakers hoard, and the city tastes fear in its mouth. The lesson of the Rubicon is carved deep. Food is power. When Caesar is assassinated, the machine he tightened won't loosen. It will pass to emperors who treat logistics as a throne's hidden leg. One of those would-be emperors is waiting in the wings, a cautious young man named Octavian. He's not a natural warrior. His strength is patience. He stares at Rome's anxious crowd and thinks, "Give them bread, and they'll give me time." In the next chapter, watch him turn that thought into an empire-wide blueprint. Augustus, that's Octavian's new name once he wins, likes to present himself in statues as serene, almost divine. But early in his reign, he is anything but serene. Rome has just survived decades of war. The streets are crowded with veterans demanding land, widows begging for food, and politicians who could flip on him if the grain stops. In a fresco of the Subura, you'd see smoke curling from 10,000 hearths, each one a small referendum on the new princeps. He can feel the city's hunger like a hand on his collar. So he bets his reign on docks and wheat. He creates a permanent office for the Annona, appointing a prefect who answers directly to him. Not the Senate, not the mob, him. He expands Ostia and builds the great harbor at Portus, with curved breakwaters like two arms hugging the sea. Picture that still aerial view, a hexagonal basin glittering, lighthouses at the mouth, warehouses stacked behind like cliff faces of brick. Dockworkers tramp down ramps, shouting heave, as cranes creak and ropes bite into their hands. He reshapes the provinces too. Egypt becomes his private breadbasket. After defeating Antony and Cleopatra, he keeps it under imperial control because whoever holds the Nile holds the city. In private, the old insecurity flickers. He was once the sickly boy nobody expected to rule. A single ambitious governor there could blackmail him, and that thought makes his stomach knot. No one, he tells himself, will starve me into retirement. Augustus standardizes weights and measures, restores roads, and posts soldiers along key routes. Every mile marker is a promise. Supplies will flow. He builds Horia, state granaries, along the river and inside the city, tall as apartment blocks, cool and dim inside, with grain dust floating in lantern light. When the fleet arrives, he turns distribution into ceremony. Citizens receive grain tickets stamped with his image. It's subtle, a loaf with a logo, but the message lands. Your dinner comes from Augustus. By the time he dies, the system is humming. But it's also addicted to empire. More mouths, more baths, more games, more bread, and fewer second chances. The machine must grow or it will break. In the next chapter, we climb aboard the grain fleet itself, out across a sea that can be both highway and executioner. Keep your sea legs, the voyage is rough. We're in Alexandria now, early summer, when the Nile has done its miracle and the granaries are full. Picture an Egyptian quay, limestone steps slick with river water, palm shadows wavering, and a smell of mud, incense, and fresh grain. Huge sacks are carried on shoulders to the belly of broad-beamed ships called navis frumentarii. The captains aren't senators. Many are Greek or Syrian businessmen with sun-cracked hands. But they're carrying something more valuable than gold, Rome's patience. The voyage is a seasonal gamble. If you look at an old mosaic of a ship at sea, notice the swollen sail and the gods painted on the prow. They're not decoration. Storms can smash a fleet, and pirates, though rarer now, still lurk. So captains pray, but they also calculate like bankers. They sign contracts with the imperial agents, promise delivery by a certain month, and know the penalty for failure can be ruin or exile. They wait for the Etesian winds that blow northwest, turning the Mediterranean into a conveyor belt. Miss that window and you drift, losing weeks, losing profit, maybe losing your head. At sea, the ships travel in loose convoys, escort vessels nearby. Night is pitch black except for stars and the occasional lamp on a companion ship. You hear creaking timber, smell tar and wet rope, and feel grain shifting under your feet like a living thing. Every captain has an inner war going on. Take a shorter, risky route past Crete, or a longer, safer one hugging the coast. A wrong call means empty bakeries in Rome and an angry prefect looking for a scapegoat, and the captain knows that in Rome, a scapegoat is often served cold. Now cut to Portus. The Annona prefect stands on the pier, cloak fluttering, pretending to be bored while squinting at the horizon. In a still of his office, you'd see wax tablets piled like mini-tombs and sand on the floor from restless pacing. He wants competence to be enough, but he's keenly aware that emperors praise him only when nothing goes wrong. The moment a fleet is late, his career evaporates. So he counts hulls as they enter the harbor, whispering the tally under his breath like a prayer. When the ships finally approach Italy, the coastline smells of pine and smoke. The lighthouse of Portus winks through the haze. Customs officers climb on board, poke the cargo, seal tablets with wax. Then the grain is unloaded into Horea, and from there into river barges, and from there into carts, and from there into mouths. It's a relay race with no applause. Most Romans never think about that chain. They only notice when it snaps. And soon it will, not from weather, but from a man who wants the throne and knows how to pull on Rome's hungriest thread. If you've ever seen a portrait bust of Emperor Claudius, you know the look: heavy jowls, a tentative smile, a man who doesn't quite fit the hero mold. Claudius knows that too. He came to power in 41 CE almost by accident, dragged from behind a curtain after Caligula's murder. The Senate snickered that he was a stammering scholar. Claudius' private fear is simple: one hungry week and they'll yank him back behind that curtain forever. So he bets his reign on docks and wheat. Stand with me in a still view of Ostia during a winter storm. Waves slap the mole, rain needles the harbor, and ships roll like corks. Too many captains refuse to risk it, preferring safer ports, and Rome feels every delay. Claudius decides the sea will not dictate his politics. He orders a vast new harbor, the first version of Portus, with artificial islands and a lighthouse built on a sunk ship. Imagine the engineering hubris. Thousands of workers, cranes squealing, stone blocks thudding into place, all to make the sea behave. He sweetens the deal for shippers. Tax breaks, legal protections, even compensation if their cargo is lost at sea. It's state-sponsored insurance, and it works. More ships sail, more grain arrives, and Claudius basks in a rare thing for him: cheers that aren't polite. But logistics creates monsters as well as miracles. The Annona bureaucracy swells. Middlemen skim, inspectors take bribes, and a shadow economy of stolen grain appears in alley markets. Claudius feels the trap, clamp down too hard, and he scares the merchants. Ignore it, and the city blames him for corruption. In his journals he scribbles, "I must be feared by the thieves, but loved by the sailors." Easier written than done. When Claudius dies, his successor Nero inherits the machine. Nero loves theater more than ledgers. In a painted banquet scene, he looks carefree, but after the Great Fire of 64 CE, he lies awake listening to hungry refugees outside the palace walls. He keeps the grain flowing, rebuilds warehouses, and stages distributions as if they're curtain calls, hoping applause can cover guilt. The capital is safe for the moment, but the empire is changing. Far away on the Rhine and Euphrates, legions are about to realize their own bellies are a political weapon. And that realization will shake the system to its core. Next stop, the frontiers. 69 CE is the year of 4 emperors, and it feels like Rome is spinning on a broken axle. Put up a still of the Forum that year, and you'd see heads close together, people listening for rumors like they're tuning radios. Nero is dead, and in the vacuum Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and finally Vespasian scramble for the throne. Each understands one brutal fact: legions march for pay, but cities riot for bread. Vitellius, the short-lived emperor of feasts, thinks power is won in Rome itself. He showers the crowd with games and pork, but he neglects the grain routes. Meanwhile, the Tiber's warehouses begin to thin out. By late summer, you can almost smell the anxiety, sour sweat at the bakery lines, dust in half-empty sacks, smoke from street altars where women pray to Ceres for a shipment that isn't coming. In the east, Vespasian, a soldier with a farmer's patience, reads the situation clearly. He is in Judea with loyal legions and, more importantly, close to Egypt. Control Egypt, control the grain. Control the grain, and Rome becomes negotiable. Picture Vespasian standing on a dock at Alexandria, not wearing jewels but a plain military cloak. He's no romantic. He feels the weight of his age and wonders if he's too old to gamble for the purple. If he loses, his sons die with him. If he wins, the empire might breathe again. He chooses the gamble. Back in Italy, prices soar. Bakers mix barley into wheat. The crowd curses Vitellius and begins to mutter Vespasian's name. The Senate senses the tide turning and, in a masterclass of political survival, declares for the man who can fill the granaries. When Vespasian's troops enter the city, they don't just carry swords. They escort convoys down the Appian Way like royal treasure. The new emperor fixes what civil war frayed. He restores discipline to the Annona, expands storage, and makes sure the grain fleet is protected by permanent naval forces. Yet he also recognizes a darker truth. The empire now runs on a single lifeline from the Nile. He wants redundancy, not because he loves engineering, but because he hates being cornered. So he looks west, to Africa, to Spain, to any shore that can grow wheat. That search for backup will build Rome's logistics to its greatest height and to its most dangerous dependence. Fast forward to the 2nd century, the so-called Golden Age. If we had a still panorama of Rome under Trajan, you'd notice cranes everywhere, new forums rising, and barges sliding along the Tiber like ants on a leaf. The logistics empire is no longer just about grain. It's about olive oil from Baetica in Spain, wine from Gaul, garum fish sauce from Lusitania, marble from Greece, even snow hauled down from the Apennines to chill imperial drinks. Rome consumes the world and then asks for seconds. How do they pull it off? 2 words: organization and obsession. Trajan expands Portus again, deepens channels, and orders new roads to link the hinterland to ports. Along those roads runs the cursus publicus, the state courier service. Picture a mile station on the Via Flaminia. Tired horses steaming in cold air, fresh ones waiting, a clerk stamping a travel diploma. Official wagons carry not just letters, but shipment orders and emergency requisitions. It's the empire's nervous system. Hadrian, Trajan's successor, is a traveler. In statues he's chiseled with philosopher calm, but on the road he worries. He sees that a legion's morale is measured in rations. So granaries are built on frontiers, and supply depots shadow every army. A centurion on the Danube may never see the Colosseum, but he sees the same stamped amphora and knows Rome remembers him. Hadrian wants loyalty, yet he fears the frontier will outgrow the center. Feeding soldiers becomes his way of holding the leash. Now zoom in on a distribution day in the city. In a street painting you'd see citizens clutching wooden tokens, shuffling toward a horium under the eye of bored guards. Inside, the air is cool and powdery. Rows of sacks rise like dunes. The Annona prefect watches the scales with a hawk's focus, because a short measure today means a riot tomorrow. He dreams of being praised for fairness, but he knows he'll be blamed for any crack in the pipeline, even one caused by a storm 5 provinces away. For a while, it works beautifully, but perfection hides fragility. The more smoothly Rome is fed, the more it assumes it will always be fed. No emperor likes to say ration. No crowd likes to hear it. And on the edges of this golden world, pressures are building. Climate swings, the Antonine Plague, and enemies who understand that cutting a road can kill a city as surely as a sword. We're nearing the crest of the wave. In the next chapter, that wave begins to break, slowly at first, right now. The 3rd century arrives like a bad cough that turns into pneumonia. Emperors rise and fall faster than wheat can grow. On a coin from this era, the faces change every few years, sometimes every few months, a visual reminder of chaos. And chaos is poison to logistics. Start with plague. After the Antonine Plague comes the Cyprian Plague. Imagine a still of a cramped insula stairwell, flickering oil lamp, sick bodies wrapped in blankets, the smell of vinegar and fear. Fields lose workers. Ship crews shrink. Even tax clerks get buried, leaving accounts in tatters. The grain still grows in Egypt and Africa, but moving it becomes harder. Then war tightens the vice. Goths and other groups raid across the Danube. Persians push in the east. Sea lanes are no longer peaceful blue highways. Picture a grain ship off Crete, or splintered, crew taken, sacks dumped into the waves. Legions demand supplies at the front, so stockpiles meant for Rome get diverted. A frontier commander thinks, my men eat first, or they mutiny, and the capital becomes just another claimant. You can feel the empire's old unity fraying into regional survival. Money adds insult. Inflation spins out of control as emperors debase the coinage to pay troops. Merchants who once happily carried grain for a stable contract now demand higher prices or refuse state payment in fake silver. Some hoard, some smuggle, some switch to safer local trade. The Annona prefect, staring at a pile of worthless coins, feels the old dread return. How do I buy food with money no one trusts? One emperor, Aurelian, tries to keep the city calm by expanding the dole itself. Not just raw grain, but baked bread, olive oil, even pork on certain days. Walk through a still of a distribution line under the new Aurelian walls. Grim soldiers, citizens clutching baskets, and the emperor's name carved into the stone above them. Aurelian's inner conflict is almost tender. He dreams of restoring Rome's greatness, yet he knows he's buying time with every loaf. Hold together, he tells the resin-glued empire. Just long enough for me to fix you. Rome responds with patchwork fixes, requisitions, forced prices, harsher penalties. But each fix adds friction. Supply routes that were once smooth become clogged with bureaucracy and fear. The system still works, but only just, like a cracked pot held together by rope. And in the middle of the storm, a hard-eyed reformer is about to step onto the stage. He will try to rebuild the logistics empire with iron rules. The question is whether iron can mend what time has rusted. Meet Diocletian, rising in 284 CE. If you look at his statue, he's square-jawed, almost carved like a fortress. That's the vibe he's going for. He inherits a logistics nightmare and decides the only way to save the empire is to treat it like an army camp. Order, rations, schedules. No improvising. First, he splits power into the tetrarchy, for emperors for 4 regions. It's not a love of teamwork, it's fear of distance. Diocletian knows a single ruler can't see a grain shortage in Antioch and a mutiny in Gaul at the same time. So each region gets its own logistic command center. Think of it as dividing a sprawling company into branches so the trucks stop getting lost. Supply for Rome is still sacred, but now so is supply for Milan, Trier, and Nicomedia, the new imperial hubs. Then he reforms taxes. Instead of demanding money that keeps losing value, he demands goods, tax in kind. Land is surveyed, harvests estimated, and quotas set. This many sacks of wheat, this much oil, this many cattle. In a still of a provincial census, you'd see officials with measuring rods stepping through fields while farmers watch nervously. The farmer's motive is survival. Diocletian's motive is control. He believes fairness is less important than predictability. He issues the edict on maximum prices, trying to freeze inflation by law. On stone inscriptions, prices are carved like commandments. Merchants grumble, some cheat, some vanish into black markets. Diocletian feels the tension. He wants to be the savior who stabilizes the empire, but he's haunted by the thought that too much pressure will snap the economy he's trying to bind. Still, he pushes, because chaos is worse. Most important for our story, he revamps the Annona Militaris, the supply system for the army, making it as formal as the city dole. Roads are repaired, depots fortified, and regional storehouses stocked against siege. The empire becomes a network of feeding stations. It works mostly. The frontiers hold. The cities breathe again. Yet Diocletian's victory tastes like ash to him. In a palace scene lit by torches, he watches courtiers kneel as if he's a god, and he wonders whether the empire now survives because of him, or in spite of him. When he finally abdicates, retreating to his cabbages, he leaves a hardened system that can feed armies but also feed ambition. And one ambitious officer, Constantine, is already eyeing those storehouses as ladders to the sky. Watch what happens next. In 330 CE, Constantinople is dedicated on the Bosporus, a gleaming new city perched between seas like a crown on a narrow head. Look at a map, and you'll see why Constantine chooses it. Control the strait, control the trade between Black Sea and Mediterranean. But he also chooses it for a quieter reason. Rome is full of memories, rival families, and a very opinionated mob. Constantine wants a capital that owes him everything, including its next meal. So he copies Rome's playbook and upgrades it. At the dedication games, acrobats and chariot teams whirl through a brand new hippodrome while the emperor watches from a gilded box. Outside, he orders grain shipments to the new city, first from Egypt, then increasingly from Thrace and the Black Sea littoral. Picture the Theodosian harbor crowded with ships, cranes swinging sacks onto the quays, while fresh churches rise behind them. Constantinople gets its own Annona. Citizens receive free bread and oil just like Romans once did. It's loyalty baked daily. Back in old Rome, the shift is felt. The senatorial elite pretend it's fine. They still have villas and statues, but a tightness enters the system. Fewer ships arrive at Portus, and the bakery lines lengthen just enough for grumbling to start. In a still street scene, you'd see older Romans spitting, saying the emperor has run off to the east with our dinner. Egypt's harvest is now split. When a Nile flood is low, there isn't a comfortable buffer. Governors in Africa and Egypt sense the change and calculate their leverage. Two capitals, they think, means two bidders. The logistics machine, once pointed at one hungry mouth, is now feeding twins. Constantine himself is conflicted. He sees the strategic brilliance, yet he worries about overstretching the empire's arteries. He's also reshaping a religious world, and he knows hungry crowds don't meditate on theology, they throw stones. He writes to officials with sharp urgency, demanding punctuality, but also offers privileges and exemptions to merchants willing to sail farther north. He's building a new supply chain while hoping the old one doesn't collapse. It's like rewiring a house while the lights are still on. The move works, for a while. Constantinople flourishes, Rome limps on, and grain continues to flow through both ports. But once again, smoothness hides fragility. With power now divided, any shock, a rebellion, a storm, a foreign fleet, plays out in stereo. And in the next chapter, one such shock arrives on the African coast, where the empire's western lifeline waits like a stretched rope about to snap. Let's shift the camera to Carthage, 439 CE. The city's harbors are wide and glittering, full of wheat barges from the African interior. This province, Africa Proconsularis, is the West's breadbasket now, more reliable than Sicily, richer than Italy. In a still of its countryside, you'd see neat fields rolling toward the sea, dotted with estate villas and slave gangs under a white sun. Rome depends on this place the way a modern city depends on its power grid. Then the Vandals arrive. They're not a cartoon horde. They're a displaced people on the move, led by a shrewd king named Gaiseric. Picture him in a late antique mosaic. Sharp nose, tight beard, eyes that miss nothing. His motive is survival for his followers, but he's also tasted opportunity. He knows Africa's grain is a key that can open imperial doors. So when he takes Carthage almost without a fight, he doesn't just seize palaces. He seizes warehouses, shipyards, and the skilled sailors who know every current on this coast. In Rome, the news lands like a stone in water. Ships stop coming. Bread gets smaller, then rarer. The Annona officials scramble, sending frantic messages to Sicily and Spain, but it's not enough. Senators quietly melt family plate to pay for emergency imports, pretending it's generosity, knowing it's self-defense. Imagine the forum in a dust-colored still, empty stalls, angry faces, a smell of sweat and smoke. The prefect of the city sits with head in hands, torn between duty and despair. He wants to tell the crowd, we're doing all we can, but he remembers what all we can looked like when Africa was still ours. Gaiseric plays the loss like a maestro. His new fleet raids Sardinia, Sicily, even the coasts of Italy, snapping up any convoy meant for Rome. Sometimes he releases grain to keep prices steady and ransom goodwill. Sometimes he blocks it to squeeze. Rome can't threaten him easily, because a naval expedition without supplies is suicide. The logistic machine that once made Rome invincible is now a hostage. This is the irreversible turning point. The West has lost its pantry, and with it the ability to buy peace in the streets. From here on, the food system becomes triumph, not triumph. Yet, even in decline, the empire will pull off one last, desperate act to feed itself. In the next chapter, watch the Western court try to rebuild a supply chain with half the tools and twice the enemies, and see how close they come to saving the truly unsavable. Almost. The Western court doesn't give up quietly. In the 460s, Emperor Majorian, young, energetic, the kind of man who still believes he can reverse the tide, walks the docks at Portus with rolled-up sleeves. In a still you'd catch the contrast, his polished armor beside weathered planks, his gaze fixed on half-rotted hulls. Majorian's inner voice is almost pleading. If I can retake Africa, I can feed Rome, and if I can feed Rome, I can be more than a footnote. He builds a fleet. Timber is cut in Gaul and Spain, nails forged in Italian workshops, sailors recruited with promises of pay and plunder. Supply depots are laid along the coast like stepping stones. Its logistics trying to resurrect itself. But Gaiseric is watching. The Vandals torch the fleet in harbor before it sails. Majorian is left staring at smoking masts, feeling the empire's fragility in his throat. Soon he is murdered by his own officers. The message is clear. Even good intentions can't outrun a broken supply line. The Eastern Emperor tries next. In 468, a gigantic armada launches to retake Carthage, perhaps the largest amphibious operation of antiquity. Imagine a still of the sea near Cape Bon. Hundreds of sails, sunlight blinking on shields, the smell of pitch and horses. It should have been the West's salvation. Instead, Gaiseric uses fire ships and trickery to shatter it. The burning fleet turns the horizon red, and with it burns the last realistic chance to restore the old supply chain. After that, Rome adjusts downward. The Annona shrinks. Bread is still handed out, but to fewer people. In a street still from late antiquity, you'd notice more weeds between stones, fewer shop signs, and a silence where crowds once roared. Families that used to live on the dole now barter, garden small plots, or drift away to safer towns. An aging baker keeps his oven lit out of stubborn pride, but he jokes darkly that he bakes more for ghosts than for customers. When the last Western emperor is deposed in 476, there is no single dramatic famine. Odoacer and later Theodoric keep a reduced grain dole running, because even barbarian kings know the Roman trick. Feed the city, and it behaves. Yet everyone feels the difference. The hidden system that once fed Rome has changed owners, purposes, and scale. The story does not end with a bang. It ends with a warehouse door closing. But the logistics empire leaves a ghost. And in the final chapter, we'll follow that ghost into the medieval world and into our own. To see the ghost, look east. Constantinople keeps the Annona alive for centuries. In mosaics of the city, ships still crowd the Golden Horn, and state bakers still feed the poor in exchange for loyalty. The Byzantine emperors inherit Rome's lesson like a family recipe: no bread, no throne. Even when Arab fleets cut Egypt in the 7th century, the East improvises new routes through the Black Sea, proving that logistics is a kind of political adaptability. Back west, Rome's old ports don't vanish. They evolve. Portus silts up. Ostia becomes a quiet village. But the idea of organized provisioning survives in monasteries, city councils, and later in the merchant republics. Venice and Genoa will run convoys with escorts and warehouses that would feel strangely familiar to a Roman Annona clerk. The medieval world, for all its castles and crusades, is also built on grain ships and road networks. And here's the wry little twist. The logistics system that fed Rome was so successful that people forgot it existed. They praised emperors for wars won, temples raised, barbarians defeated, while the real daily miracle was a loaf that arrived on time. The men who managed it rarely got statues. They got blamed when storms hit, ignored when things worked. Like any good infrastructure, the Annona's highest achievement was being boring. Archaeologists find the evidence in small things: amphorae stamped with Spanish estate names, lead seals from Egyptian warehouses, tally marks in a granary wall. It's like finding QR codes on shards of clay. Each stamp whispers of accountants, sailors, mule drivers, and dockside cooks who never make the history books. One clerk in Ostia might have dreamed of poetry, but his pen spent its life on figures. Another might have taken bribes to feed his own kids. Their private struggles are the human gears inside the grand machine. So next time you see a photo of the Colosseum, try imagining the invisible empire behind it. The dusty Haria by the Tiber, the shouts on Alexandria's docks, the long convoy of ox carts grinding up a Roman road at midnight. Think of Augustus lying awake over Egypt, of a ship captain gambling on the wind, of a prefect counting hulls with trembling hands. Their motive was not romance, but survival, and survival built an empire. Rome fell in the west, but its logistics never really died. It just changed uniforms, languages, and spreadsheets. We are living inside that old truth every time a supermarket shelf is full. So when you reach for bread tomorrow, maybe pause for half a heartbeat and ask yourself, who, right now, is steering the ships you never see?